Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to get things started. I'm Elisa Robinson. I'm with the Contra Costa Resource Conservation District. I'm a watershed conservation manager, actually. I run our Walnut Peak Watershed Council and Contra Costa Watershed Forum, as well as a couple other programs. We're in my backyard here in Pittsburgh. It's getting a little bit windy, so you see things blowing around behind me and papers. That's for later. That's part of our demo that we're going to go through and look at actually sorting recycling and see what goes where. Is it trash? Is it compost? Is it recycle? We have a few interesting components to this. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and move into our PowerPoint, and hopefully it goes smoothly. There's lots of stuff. See the presentation? All right. Joining us today on our Zoom is Patty Powell, who is the administrator for our office, Chris Lim, who's our executive director, and Hector Alvarez, who is our outstanding e-volunteer. Patty and Hector are going to talk about composting in a couple different ways, and I'm going to go through recycling really quickly. As I mentioned, we're in my backyard, so I'm sorry the light keeps changing. Sometimes I'm clear, sometimes I'm not, but I'm here either way. So recycling, big R, multiple R's actually. So understanding the R's in recycling is looking at how we deal with the waste that we generate. And depending on who you talk to, there are a number of R's. It started with 3 back in the day. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I think we're all familiar with that one. There we go. And now we actually have a 4th one that's very common, rot, and that's going to talk about composting, how we use the organic material that we have as waste from our household use or work or wherever we are. But then it goes even further than that. And so we could have, I think, up to 8 R's if we count all of them, because depending on who you talk to, they have different ones. So a quick rundown of the other R's that are not quite so common are rethink, refuse, recover, and renew. So rethink is basically looking at how we use what we use. So the packaging, using less of it. Refuse is actually saying, no, I don't want that one use item or that sample or that giveaway that I know is just going to sit in my house and collect dust. Just refuse it. And recover and renew, they're very new and up and coming. I think recover is more industrial, and that's recovering more items from what we actually use. And then renew, sorry, I went too far. Renew is something that I don't have notes on. That's so new that I don't have it. I shouldn't have included it. Today, during our presentation, we're going to try to gain a better understanding of recycling and all the R's that are in there. And then we're going to do an interactive, at least here, I have a helper that's going to help me sort through some garbage that we've been collecting to see which bins take which items. And then we're going to do a presentation on fermentation composting by Hector Alvarez, our outstanding e-volunteer. And then we have a video from Patty Pell, who's going to talk about backyard composting. And so quickly, a brief history of recycling is, say, pre-1900s, going all the way back to when we as humans first started using materials. We didn't let a lot go to waste. Things would come back and be used in different ways all the way through. So this picture that I'm showing on the screen, that's looking kind of the more colonial era, 1700s, 1800s, and reusing materials in trusses. So instead of letting stuff go to waste, you use it again and again and again in different dresses and different outfits. And then there was an interesting story that I came across. I think it was in a Time article, and it was talking about Paul Revere. And so back in the colonial days, he was held up as a recycler, and the only reason he was able to alert us that the British were coming is that he had a scrapyard and he could ride his horse for that long and that fast because he had horseshoes that he created from metal in his own scrapyard. So recycling in general is not a new idea. It's been going on for centuries. And then we're looking to a more modern time, World War II. Of course, Rosie the Riveter is one of the emblems for that. And just kind of how we, as the United States, came together and were able to start conserving our resources so that the soldiers had what they needed, including ammunition, guns, to do their job. And this is a really cool poster that I found when I was going through and looking at this idea of recycling in the United States and how it's evolved over the years. Is, you know, even the housewives, they were told to gather your paper, your metal, and bones even, and take them in and recycle them. That's when you started getting cash back for these items that you, the CRV, as we call it in California, to encourage you to preserve your resources and turn them back in so that we can create something from waste. Then there's the way that we look at recycling now. And so, well, most people think that it started with the environmental movement because that's when things transitioned to a easier to use. You can do it at home. They have bins that are provided from your garbage companies for you to easily place items for them to sort through and take out materials that can be used again and again and again, from cans to glass, paper even. And this is a huge switch in the 1970s because it made it common, it made it easy, and it took it from us going and getting money back directly for it to our garbage services being able to get some sort of profit off of it. And in this time, of course, what we're celebrating today or this week is Earth Day. And so this is an article from the New York Times looking at the first Earth Day and the crowds that were there. So again, just kind of an overview of the 1970s and how the idea of recycling didn't start there, started way before then. And we're going to move forward into what recycling looks like today. And so one of the things that I didn't give you when we were first starting this off is a definition of recycling. So when I say recycling, you know, there's lots of R's, but what does recycling stand for itself? So it's a process of collecting and processing materials that would otherwise be thrown away as trash and turning them into new products. And so each of these R's that go into our idea of recycling are very important. And let me catch up with myself here. So the first one we're going to look at is reducing, and that's just reducing how much trash we use. So what things you can do to reduce your waste is bring your own shopping bag, stop buying bottled water, bring a reusable coffee cup. So we're just reducing the amount of waste that we generate every day. Reusing is actually something that is interesting when you're comparing it to recycling. So reusing is, you know, again, like if you do need a shopping bag, it's a paper bag, you use it again and again, or the plastic ones you pay for. But reuse is taking something and changing it, converting it into another item that you can use. But the difference between reuse and recycle is that reuse, you don't need any new energy or input. It's a simple transition from one thing to the other. Recycling, you have energy, you're breaking it down, and you're turning it into another item that can be used later on. Rot is composting, and we're going to have a couple of great presentation. Well, one presentation and one video, both are very good. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. But it is composting, and there's multiple ways that you can do that, from your backyard composting to kitchen waste composting to just the bins, putting it in the bins that you get from your garbage company. And then the other R that I chose to focus on from the other 4 options that are kind of new and making their way into our vocabulary is rethink, because that's one of the basic things that we can do, and it goes into all the other R's that we've mentioned so far. Rethink how we are using items. So the packaging that we get from the store, does it come in one of those clamshell cases that are plastic that we have to cut off? Can we have another way of packaging it that's more environmentally friendly? Instead of getting the styrofoam and plastic wrapped packages for your, I guess, meat or vegetables, can you get it in a paper bag? Can you get it in paper wrapping, like in butcher paper? So there are a lot of different things that we can do when we're rethinking how exactly our waste is generated, and if we generate it at all. And of course, that goes back into the reduce idea and the reuse. So it's all connected when it comes down to it. So our next slide is going to look at the changing policy. And so this picture is amazing, right? All the plastic that's in the background, it's a mountain of it, and you can see that it's kind of sorted at the top too. So for decades, China has been taking a lot of the recycling and waste from the United States and the world. But in 2018, they actually, I think it was 2017 actually, sorry, they enacted a policy where they are not taking the world's recycling and the way that they were before. So how has it changed over the last couple of years? There are a couple things that you'll see on your screen, and I'm going to kind of jump through them real quick. So the contamination level that they're willing to take from countries is lowered significantly. So before it was around 3%, so you could have organic or particulate matter in there that, you know, up to 3%, and they would still accept it. Now it's down to 0.5. So our companies, our garbage companies, are telling us that when you're recycling, your containers must be empty, clean, and dry. Because even a messy ketchup bottle can ruin a whole, you know, garbage truck full of items that are no longer recyclable. They no longer take our mixed paper, which is one of the things that they're still accepting as far as our local garbage companies are concerned. And for Contra Costa County, we have Republic Services and Mount Diablo Resource Recovery. Those are our two main garbage services for the entire county. And if you do, and this information I'm giving you today is kind of a more general overall idea of recycling. And I've incorporated information from both of these companies. But if you have specific questions that are detailed, they are the ones that you should contact. And their websites are great. They have a lot of information as far as what you can recycle and what you can't recycle. And you'll see some of that later on in these slides. Sorry, I went down a different path there. Again, with our sorting and looking at what we're doing at home as far as complying with this new policy from China. They don't want us to use garbage bags because, again, that could be a contaminant later on down the line. And some of the research that I did is that the plastics type number 1 and number 2, that's where they're focusing on. That's acceptable at any dump or any garbage company. When they pick up your recycling, they'll take those. And then as you get further up, because, you know, number 5, number 6, number 7, that gets harder to actually take in and get recycled. And okay, so really quickly, this is from the Republic Services Comprehensive Recycling Guide, and it looks at what's going into your recycling bin and what's going into your compost or organics bin. And so mixed plastics, they do take that 1 through 7, I believe it is. But it's always good to check once you get to the higher numbers in the plastic scale. They'll take metal, including foil, as long as it is clean and dry, and glass and paper. So all the items you see there, mixed paper, anything you'll get in your mailbox and the cardboard boxes, they do want you to, if you shred it, they do want it in a container so it doesn't get all over the place. So put it in a bag or something like that. And then when you look at the organics, which I'll go through really quickly since we do have some good composting demos, fruits and veggies and the byproduct from that, dairy and bread, so cheese, breads, you see a pizza slice there, that's compostable. One thing I forgot to mention when it goes back to recycling is that if you have a pizza box, they don't want the soiled part of it. So like say the top got into the cheese, they don't want the top. They'll take the bottom as long as it's clean. You include meat and seafood and shells in the composting bin, which you can see kind of to my right. My bins back there with their little signs, super compost, market recycling, and then the trash bin is behind me. They'll take a food soiled paper in composting because that will break down. And of course your yard trimmings and grass and some wood. All right, next slide. Again, emphasizing the fact that things must be empty, clean, and dry. So clean out your yogurt containers, whatever you have that you want to recycle, make sure that there's no residue in there. For now, I mean, we see garbage companies trying to adapt and find ways to remove the organic matter after the fact. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years, how we adapt to it, because there are a number of ways that we're trying to do so, including bringing recycling centers back to the U.S. where we can process our own waste. Because we were 40%, sorry, this is not windy, we were 40% of the waste stream going to China, I believe is the number I heard. So I went through that really quickly, and I have a demo for you guys as well. We're going to go through and sort a couple of items. Do we have any questions so far? Felt like I was just chattering a lot there.
No.
Okay. Okay. So now we're going to go to our demo. So let me get set up here and make sure that everything is in the shot and that you can hear me. So I have items that we have collected, and this is my sister who's going to be our Vanna White today. Oh, let me close my screen. Stop share so you can see it better. All right, so we have our Vanna White, Marisa Robinson back there. Yeah, I can see you. And we're going to go through and sort some items. And all right, and I'm going to get out of the screen so you can see better. And again, we're outside, so the lights are changing. All right. So I'm in the front, and we have 2 clamshells from a takeout. Which one goes in recycling? Right, the clean one. The clean one. So again, must be clean. And this one you can take back inside and clean it before we put it in recycling. And then we have can. So simple can, that goes in recycling. That's a pretty easy one. Glass bottle, also recycling. That one, carton, as long as it's clean, it can go in recycling. And you guys can hear me okay? I keep turning, sorry. Egg carton. Ooh, that one's a tricky one. Some say garbage, some say recycling. But from what we saw on for public services, I would say recycling. And so a trick for things that have mixed things, you have to separate them. So even if they're both recyclable, you have to separate. So you have to remove the plastic and put them in there separately. And those containers are actually compostable. So we will put that, I think, in the trash because we're very specific. No, actually, put them in composting. Sorry.
Hey, Lisa, do you think you can come closer to the computer when you're talking so folks can hear better?
Can you hear me really well? I'll just take this up and you describe it. Okay. Now let's go container. And they both have the recycling emblem on them. So you can put that in recycling. Let's separate. I did. All right. Here, I'll sit down. So you can actually hear me better. Okay, Vanna. Yes. All right. What's your next item? Right there. Wait. It's in your hand. So both cardboard. So some of these particular ones and some of them are a little more straightforward. Sure. Plastic. It's good that they separate because they want into different.
Hey, Lisa, I think you have to be even closer to the computer because the sound is breaking up.
Okay. You don't have ideas. So keep your head on. Next are these recyclable items. We have another cardboard box. It's a big
Sounds, hold on a second. It sounds like there's some feedback or something.
I don't know what's going on. Is it on now?
It's not on.
Is it on now?
If somebody else is on the Zoom call on their phone, they have to mute the Zoom on their phone.
It's on mute.
There's no sound on.
Yep. Is yours?
No. Can you hear me better now? That was me, but it's not me. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, it picks you up best when you're right in front of the screen.
Okay. Right.
Are you want to write this out loud?
So, there's cardboard. That would be most likely as long as you break it down and make it flat. Because that's the purpose for recycling per site. And then our flexible small packaging for plastic is not recyclable for everywhere. For public services, has been put it now in a bag. So we put also plastic bags and a larger plastic bag because we have a bag. Otherwise, we have to go into trash because they get caught in the everywhere things that they would that help them sort the trash. These guys are little coffee bags.
Keurig.
Little coffee bags. Again, has to be clean and dry to recycle. So you have to separate it, take all that out, and recycle the outside. On some of them actually are not made of recyclable containers. So then they'll just be trash. Trash. And I'll do a couple more items before we turn it over to Hector. And I think you'll recognize these from our videos. And you definitely want to cut them into smaller pieces so that you can turn them into it's stuck in there. But they're not recyclable at all centers. So again, it depends on who your service provider is. And then finally, we're going to go with something, a common item that we've all been seeing around a lot.
Gloves.
Gloves. Yep.
And masks.
So, gloves and masks. Something that we're all using a lot right now, and I keep finding in parking lots and along curves. They don't go there. They definitely go in that trash receptacle over there right behind you, along with masks. So, not recyclable, but it is trash and does keep us safe. All right, so that's it for our recycling demo. Hopefully, you learned enough that you understood what I was saying. So, I'm going to turn it over to Hector, who's going to talk about composting, but a specific type of composting, which is fermentation composting, and it's something that I think you guys will enjoy. Hector, you there? You're on mute.
Hello. There it is. My bad. I was trying to unmute it. It was fighting me. All right. Give me a second here. Let me pull up my screen here.
All right.
How's that? Can you see it?
You can see it.
Perfect. Can you hear me? That's the second part, right? And you can't see me, so I'll be anonymous for that part, for the visual. But nonetheless, my name's Hector Alvarez, born and raised in California. Now I reside in New Mexico in Albuquerque. I'm very happy to be with you all today and talking about composting and adding a twist, I guess, on composting and kind of my breakdown here will be kind of showing you a different way to look at composting and a different method of doing composting. So I'll fill in what Patty isn't really talking about. Patty will talk more about the traditional composting, and then I'll talk about fermenting your compost before you put it into a compost bin or a compost pile outside in the backyard. So before I go into the method of composting, just wanted to talk about the basics on what are the bacteria that are used to inoculate, inoculating meaning to contaminate your kitchen waste so that it breaks down faster. Dr. Higa, who's out of Japan in 1982, isolated these 3 different types of fungus and bacteria. Yeast is actually a fungus. And in combination, these 3 work to break down organic matter, predominantly kitchen waste, but it's been used to break down sewage waste and all kinds of other types of waste. There's a lot of projects that happened in Japan during this time where they try to, they used it to in a more industrial way. The way we're using it is just, typical house kitchen waste scenario. So I won't go too into the different types of industry that it's used for, just kind of break down the 3 types of bacteria. And he actually, there's a story behind it. He was he was doing research at a lab, I guess, and he was throwing away the bacteria because he's using like these common things like yeast and lactic acid bacteria. You can get lactic acid bacteria from putting rice in water and sieving out the rice, and whatever's left over is actually lactic acid bacteria. It's very prominent in the environment. And yeast obviously is used to make beer, to make fermented beverages, and also to obviously make bread. So these are very common non-toxic, microbes that are pretty much in the air, as well as phototropic bacteria or purple sulfur bacteria. They're a little bit harder to isolate. I guess the story goes that he put them, he was throwing them away in the same place, and it wasn't until he mixed these 3 that he noticed that the grass started growing greener and more robust in that section, and that led him to understand that it was the combination of these 3, not in an isolation, right? So he tried each one isolated, and it was the actual combination of these 3 that made the difference in accelerating that composting process. All right, so just kind of wanted to break that down and give him that kind of light. There's this website, Emro Japan. You can go on there, and I pulled a lot of some of that stuff from his website, so it'll go way more into depth on what he was doing and also all the other cool stuff that came out of his research. Cool things that you can use. So you can purchase this on Amazon, like it's called EM. Effective microbes. It comes in a liquid form, and you can dilute it with water, put some molasses in it, and then you can use it to clean. You can clean urine from pets if you have puppies and stuff, or full-grown animals. I know my cat does things like that. So here and there, you actually use the microbes to eliminate the sulfur-causing bacteria that make the foul odors. It also, this is from his website, so I don't advise you do it, but this is what he's advising you could use it for, is washing baby cups and plates. So it's definitely non-toxic. It's not something that will cause harm to any humans or pets. So I thought that was pretty cool. Here's more of the reason why I'm presenting on it, because it definitely does a huge improvement in composting as far as getting rid of the foul odor. I know composting inside your house is not really seen as a thing because of that, because it decomposes in a way that it decomposes really fast. So this method of composting is actually anaerobic. It doesn't require any oxygen. So you just put, and I'll talk more about the process of it, but this is the main reason why I'm really interested in microbes, and it just kind of flourished and took me into all kinds of different directions. So yeah, also gardening, it's also, you can use the microbes for gardening. If you don't want to compost, you could just directly put it into your soil, and it creates the foundation of the micro food web, and it allows the food chain to be accelerated. It brings in beneficial microbes as well as insects that eat that food chain from the top to the bottom. Most soils that are in bad shape lack that food chain. They lack the diversity of soil microbes. So using these isolated microbes to then jumpstart your soil is great. And it also jumpstarts your compost. So let's go into the type of composting that I'm talking about here. It goes by the name of Bokashi, which just pretty much means fermented organic matter. There's several meanings for it. I'm not sure exactly what the correct meaning is, but that's what I kind of know it as. So this is kind of a very easy way to do it. You create your bucket by stacking 2 paint buckets on top of each other. These are very easily accessible at any hardware store. You might even be able to use some old ones that you have laying around. And what you could do is the top bucket, so it's easier to see here. If I would use the same color, it would have been harder. So the top one is obviously, it's going to serve as where you put your actual kitchen waste. You're gonna perforate that top one though. You can use it with you can just use a screwdriver and a battery powered one with the actual the little piece, the bit that'll actually make a hole, and you just drill a bunch of holes on the top one, and then so that allows the fermentation tea to go into that white bucket that's under it, and it separates the liquid from the organic matter. So this one, the middle picture that's right here, actually has a spigot on it. You can actually buy it with the spigot, or you can put a spigot on it. And there's also companies that make these buckets. So these are, well-established patented products that you can buy. I'm just all about, using what you have. And if you have 2 buckets, you can definitely create your own. So yeah, this gets a little bit more technical. You could put a spigot into even this bucket, or you could buy a bucket like that already. So yeah, the important part is to create a lot of holes so that the liquid doesn't kind of stay stagnant in that top layer, and it filters down to the bottom. And then at the bottom, you'll get this yellow-orange liquid depending on what you're composting. It'll fall to the bottom, and then you just separate the buckets, empty the liquid into another jug, and then that'll be used as compost tea. So you can water that down and then apply it directly to your foliage on your plants or into the soil, whatever works best. And then you take the top organic matter, and we'll talk about what to do with what's in the black bucket, what the actual bulk of your kitchen waste is. So what you do with that is, so you can purchase Bokashi. It's Bokashi. You can purchase this on Amazon. You can purchase this on the internet. It's literally just rice bran that's been inoculated or fermented with the bacteria that we were talking about. And this stuff already is just crawling with microbes. So you layer your kitchen waste, a couple inches, 3 inches thick, or just a layer, and then you apply some of this rice bran onto there. And then what you want is a final product that's just covered in this rice bran. And the actual compost will not start to decay. I think that's the important part and the difference in how you compost and ferment your products. This will not start to decompose in this bucket. It'll get pickled, like if you ferment anything like kimchi, like pickles, it'll stay pickled, and then the bacteria basically digest it, kind of like a ruminant stomach digests grass. This digests within this bucket, so that when you add it into your actual compost pile, it's pre-digested and full of different organic acids, polysaccharides, amino acids. This is a split impact of use. So this is the conventional way of composting and how long it takes. And this is when you use the EM or the effective microbes to digest your compost beforehand. If you can even apply the liquid to your compost pile outside, and it'll actually speed it up, or you can completely, just do the Bokashi and then add it to your compost pile later. There's several ways to do it. I know not everyone has an actual compost pile or a backyard even per se to actually compost in that way. So you can also use a bin or a larger kind of storage bin Put that by a bag of soil, and then mix your Bokashi bucket organic matter with that bag of soil or a couple bags of soil, and just keep it in your bin, and it'll finalize the digestion process of digesting your organic matter. Leave it in there for 3 weeks, depending on the temperature outside, and you'll come back to rich soil. It'll just complete the digestion and complete the decomposition in that bin. So the impact, we're talking about Earth Day and the environment. This process improves soil condition and increases also the purification ability in the water. Microbes get into the water and therefore clean the water. So using this type of and exposing the environment to all these microbes that you're composting with is beneficial to everything. And I'm very excited to talk about it. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I do have a video. I don't know if I have time to play it, but if you're interested, you can write this down and you can look it up later. It actually it talks about more of like, how do I then bury my fermented compost? You can do trenches in your backyard, in your garden, and then you can bury it there and then plant on top of that, as long as you let a couple weeks for it to digest into the soil. So that video will go over all that stuff and kind of solidify this conversation. If you have any other questions, just reach out to me.
Now, we don't have time for the video today, but we can post the link and make sure that everybody can access it.
Okay.
Let's see, did we get any questions that came through? I know I had a couple questions that I wanted to go back and make sure that I answer. I don't see anything right now for composting, but we'll see what happens after this next video that we're going to watch. Before we get to the video, we had a question from Peter and one from Patty. So for finishing items in the recycling bin and put it in the curb, they don't want you to use plastic bags to contain, aside from one that contains much smaller plastic bags. So that sounds confusing, but just loose items for the most part, unless it's the thin plastic bags, then you put them into a larger bag and recycle that. And companies ask about having lids on your.
Hey, Lisa, can you be right in front of your computer when you're talking? There you go.
I'm right here. So it's still breaking up. I know it's windy out here, so that might not be helping either. So did you hear the last question?
Can you go over it really quick again?
Yeah, so do they want you to use garbage bags or plastic bags for your recycling when you put them in your curbside bin? No, they don't. They want loose items, and they want to be able to just dump it without having to deal with the plastic bags, unless it's containing other small flexible plastic pieces like plastic bags. And Patty asked about having lids on your plastic items that you're putting in your recycling bin. If it's like a cap for a water bottle or soda, like a small plastic cap, then they want it on top of the bottle or connected to the other item. And if it's two of the same pieces, it's good to have together. Otherwise, if it's one type of, like one is paper and one is plastic, or one is plastic and one is metal, they want it separate, because like with like. And then there were a couple questions for Hector in the Q&A.
Yeah, do you want to answer that one, Hector, so everybody can get it too?
Yeah, are we talking about the citrus question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't really experienced many issues with it decomposing, but I do know it does take a little bit longer.
All right, also repeat the question so folks know.
Yeah, so the question is, I've heard that citrus can cause issues with composting. Is that true? As far as I know, it doesn't cause, I've also not composted a lot of citrus, maybe peeling a few oranges here and there, but that hasn't become a problem for me. I also Bokashi everything, so everything gets fermented and composted anyways. So as far as I know, I haven't had any issues with it, but there might be a problem, I'm not sure.
Okay. There's one more. Yes, Peter, keep the caps on plastic bottles. He asked to for me to repeat that one. I guess you guys couldn't hear it. Keep lids on plastic bottles unless it's like a bigger, like a to-go container or with two different pieces that are together and it's not the same plastic. And also to dry it out, unless you're gonna put that time in, Patty, to hand dry everything, then leave them separate. Shake off the water, make sure it's kind of dry, and then you put them in there separately. Seeing no more, maybe one more questions. Let's go to Patty's video. So Patty Pell, our administrator, put together a video to talk about her backyard composting. And I'll let Patty take it away, and then Chris is going to play it for us through the webinar.
Okay, hi there, everybody. Welcome. Thank you, Elisa and Hector, for your presentations. Very informative. And Hector, you're very knowledgeable and technical. Now, mine is for the people who might be scared off from that. This is how easy composting can be. However, you might have highlighted one disadvantage of my method. It does take a while. In fact, we have piles that we use 1 year and then compost for the next year. So ours is kind of an annual. It's not a fast thing, but it does provide nice compost at the end of the year. So Lisa, if you want to begin the video. Or Chris.
Yeah, I got it. Hold on one sec.
I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, and Hector, if you stop sharing your...
Oh, I got it. It's okay.
Got it? Okay.
Yep.
Hi, welcome to the first ever Digital Earth Week. Due to the COVID-19 virus, I am coming to you from no other place than my very own backyard. My name is Patty Pell. I'm the administrator at Contra Costa RCD. The mission here at Contra Costa RCD is to conserve and oversee the stewardship of our natural resources within the county. In order to do so, we are all about recycling. The 4 R's of recycling are reduce, recycle, reuse, and rot. Today I am going to concentrate on the 4th R, rot. This is composting made simple. My background is not in science at all. As I mentioned, I am the administrator. I'm not a biologist, I am not a hydrologist, I'm not an herbologist. So this is the non-scientific. There will be no pH reading. There is no plastic bins to rotate our compost. It's only piles. There's 4 piles involved, so stay tuned for the 4 piles by Patty. So come on inside and I will show you how it all begins. Hi, thank you for joining me in my kitchen. This is where the magic begins. As I mentioned, I keep it very simple, so I only use fruit and vegetable scraps. There are many other things you can add to your compostable, your organic compostable. Check your website if you'd like to see a list, but here's an example that comes from Republic Services of all the organics that can be compostable. But what I do is I keep my little bin here off to the side, and as I'm cutting vegetables or fruit, I just throw the scraps right into here, and when it's full, I take a trip out to the backyard and put it in the piles. Why don't you come join me? I'll show you how it's done. Okay, as I mentioned, as soon as my bin is full, I just walk it out to the compost. And out here, as you can see, we have 4 different piles. I'm all about piles. And that pile over there is where we're putting the current compost that will be next year's compost to use. So that's all breaking down, as you can see. And over here is last year's compost that we will use for this year's planting. And then we just have leaves. When we get energetic and feel like raking up some leaves, we pile them here. That way we can add those into the compost pile for more carbon as well. And then grass, Same thing there. When we're energetic and we actually mow the lawn, we will just put the grass clippings there and then turn those into the pile as well. So I have my bin full of scraps. I throw it right on there. And then just looking at that pile, it's obvious to me that it's kind of clumpy, so it needs some carbon on there. So I will turn it, and you know how it is in Contra Costa County, we have that adobe soil. So we add some amendments, add some of that, and turn them in. Turn them into the compost. We will add, I am probably not the one to be demonstrating this, and we will add some grass, because remember, I'm the administrator. We will add grass as well to get that to break down a little better and not be as clumpy. Okay. Plus, I'm not sure you'd want to wear flip-flops. So over here, we have our new compost for this year's planting, and I will show you how that's done. Okay, and here we have the brown gold. Now this is what's left from last year's compost. We've used a lot now since we've been home and working on our backyard a lot. And how we just use this to fertilize the plants. So we just take a little bit and then we sprinkle it right on top. We've got some berry plants over here that we'll just sprinkle on to add some nutrients. We also use these in new plantings, and we'll just dig a hole like you would normally would, and then we'll put a little layer of that before we put the plant in. Okay, and then this is what your pile will look like when you've mixed it all together. And remember, this is next year's compost. Okay, and another possibility you could do is contact your local arborist and have them deliver and drop off free chips. And then you can use this for compost itself. In the very bottom, it starts decomposing all by itself, and you can throw that into your compost for carbon as well. And on top, you've got the larger chips, so you can use those for ground cover to help eliminate some of the weeds, hopefully. And if you remember correctly, at the beginning I mentioned there were additional two that we at the RCD support. What are the other two? They are refuse and rethink. Refuse to purchase products that cause harm to our environment or adds to the ever-growing recycling products. Do you need that single product? And rethink. Rethink your buying practices, especially during this time of the quarantine, when we're cleaning out our rooms, cleaning our houses. Do we really need all those products that we have? Rethink single-use products. Is there something that we can use that will be multi-use and we could use again? It's a perfect time to rethink the effect of our actions on the environment. Well, I hope I've shown you how simple composting can be, so you can take advantage of our 4th R and let your food scraps rot. This will produce brown gold for you. It's always available. It'll help the environment, eliminate some waste, and help improve your plants. So to conclude, I just encourage you during this time of quarantine to rethink. Rethink how we spend our time, what products we purchase, and the effects we have on our environment. The RCD encourages you to consider the many and easy ways you can join us with our conservation efforts right here in the county. So go compost, make your own brown gold, use this time to nurture yourself and your family in your yard. Hope to see your pictures of your beautiful and healthy plants on our Facebook page. Stay well, and we at the RCD hope to see you at one of our events soon.
Great job, Patty. They have a couple questions for you in our Q&A.
Okay. Was the speaker messed up for you guys too?
Let's see. Can you see the Q&A? Or do you want me to read the question to you?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Did the speaker work for you guys, or was that messed up too? For you guys?
We could hear, I could hear the video.
Yeah, I heard it okay.
I don't know why it was really messed up what I was listening to, but okay. Questions, let's see. Worked fine. Okay, good. I'm glad. Okay, must have just been on my end. Let's see. Question. Trouble with pest rodents. Okay, this one's from Lisa D. Thank you, Lisa. She's asking if we have any trouble with pest or rodents getting into our compost. And what do you do when it rains a lot? Well, when it rains a lot, it is just real clumpy and wet. And remember, we have a whole year for it to dry out. As for pests and rodents, yeah, they probably do get in it. Luckily, it's far enough away from our house that we don't ever notice. We have a lot of pests and rodents here in our backyard. But that's one reason why I don't do dairy and bones and all that kind of stuff. I try to eliminate it as much as possible. That is the compost smell when it is piled like that. If I don't get it out to the backyard, it's good enough, it does smell. But once it's in the backyard, no, I've never noticed any smell. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's another question from Ben. Does a compost smell when it's piled like that?
I've never, inside it does a bit, but outside no. Yeah, I probably should use Hector's method and speed it along a bit. I'll have to give that a try.
Okay. Let's see. Do we miss any questions? Are there any other ones? And bugs are good for the compost pile, right? They help it decompose.
Right.
Yes.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have given me lots of good info on composting. Part of the reason, or the main reason that I chose this topic of recycling is because I know there was a lot of change over the last couple of years and I hadn't done my research to see what's allowed now, what's not allowed now, why it changed. So thank you for helping me educate myself and allow me to educate you guys along the way. Really appreciate it. If you have questions, I have a whole page of resources in my PowerPoint slide and contact info for myself, Hector, and Patty. If she wants to, I could just pass on emails to you. It depends on if you want those or not. But it's all there, and we're going to have it posted on our website later on. Is there anything else we need to cover before we move on? Nope. Okay, it looks like we don't have any more questions. Thank you everyone for joining us for our Earth Week here at the RCD and letting us share our passions with you guys. Chris, is there anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, not really. That was a really nice job, everybody. Thank you. Just a reminder that we have our last Earth Week presentation tomorrow at 3 p.m. And that's the history of Earth Day. And it'll be an interview with Harold Wood. And Harold helped start Earth Day at his college campus 50 years ago. So we'll get a nice perspective from him tomorrow.
Nice. All right. That sounds great. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the day and stay healthy and well. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks, Hector. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Bye.